Congress has rejected the idea. Now it's up to the president to make the final decision. That's the national news up to this minute. The time, 7:10. Weather forecast is for sunny in the morning, rain clouds in the late afternoon, and clearing by Wednesday afternoon. Stay tuned for all the late news with our next scheduled newscast at 12 noon. Now let's go back to some of that soft, easy music for all you folks headed out for work.
Jane's in a big hurry this morning. She's got an important meeting at 8 o'clock, if she can make it.
Will you two please stop that?
Jane has everything she ever wanted in life. A good job, a nice home, a husband, children. She's worked hard to make her dream come true. And now it has. Jane is quite convinced that no one as fulfilled as she is could possibly be unhappy.
Hello. Yes. Hi. Of course, I'll be there. Be there by 8 o'clock. Bye.
Why am I the only department head that has a reputation for being late?
Jane, I don't have a single clean shirt. Didn't you call the laundry?
Honey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I forgot. Oh.
Mommy! Billy took a dig!
Bob, will you please do something?
Can't now, honey. Big meeting today. All right.
Well, looks like this department head's going to be late again. But you shouldn't complain. Don't you have everything you ever wanted? You're the luckiest woman in the whole wide world.
Hello? Yes. Oh, my. It's 8 o'clock already. I'll be there. I'll be there immediately.
Mom! You didn't miss the lunch!
You're the luckiest woman in the whole wide world.
Maybe Jane isn't the luckiest woman in the world, but by society's standards and her own, she's a success. Failure would have been very painful for her. But her success seems painful, too. And since nobody likes pain, everyone has ways to escape it. Some use good memories, something like this. Now, escape attempts, good memories and good music, both do the same thing. They psychologically remove you from a painful experience. Daydreams and music are two rather mild methods for keeping life's painful moments out of consciousness. We have an arsenal of stronger weapons against every kind of pain. We call them drugs. Most of us have taken drugs. We know that some drugs have a noticeable impact on consciousness and behavior. What power do these drugs have on our bodies and minds? These are nerve cells, neurons, only a few of an incredible tangle of nerves in our brain and body. Electrical impulses sent by billions of neurons report everything we experience to the brain. Other neurons in the brain's cerebral cortex put all reports together into a complete image of our world. Our consciousness is our awareness of this mental image of reality. The brain analyzes its picture of the world and sends out orders for action to the body. Neurons are separated from each other by tiny gaps called synapses. Every nerve impulse must cross a synapse to pass from neuron to neuron. The electrical impulse does it by sending a chemical messenger. It triggers the release of one or more neurotransmitters, which float across the synapse and land in special receptor sites in the opposite neuron. A neurotransmitter's landing sparks a new electrical impulse. Now, a neurotransmitter fits its receptor sites like a key fits a lock. The transmitter's chemical structure is like the pattern of the key. Only one will fit the lock. And just as that prevents any key from opening your front door, so the transmitter's unique structure prevents just any chemical from triggering impulses in your neurons. But since nerve impulses report all the information that goes into consciousness, any chemical which could alter their reporting process would alter consciousness too. And that chemical would be like a duplicate key to your front door. Well, psychologists think some drugs are the duplicate keys to your body and mind. Here's someone with a familiar kind of pain. He has a fever. His head and muscles feel terrible. To stop the pain, he's taking a very familiar drug, aspirin. No one is sure how aspirin works, but we think it acts at the area of the pain. Aspirin is by far the most popular. So popular that you probably wouldn't consider it a consciousness-altering drug. Another pain-killing drug, morphine, works like a piece of tape put over a lock so that no key can enter. It blocks the normal transmission of a pain message. The neurotransmitter can't land on sites already occupied by morphine. So the brain stops getting messages that the body is in pain. It's what we call fast, fast, fast relief. Several of the drugs called painkillers, including opium, Novocaine, and cocaine, stop pain by blocking it. But that's exactly how many painkillers do their jobs, either by blocking pain messages or changing your brain's awareness of reality. The body may continue to experience pain, but the brain doesn't know it, so you're no longer conscious of it. Of course, aspirin produces only a mild alteration of consciousness. Other drugs are not so gentle. This is D-lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. Acid is the best known of a whole family of drugs that make you hallucinate. Others are mescaline, psilocybin mushrooms, and the fruit of the peyote cactus. These relatives have had an honored role in religious rituals since their beginning. The ancient Aztecs called them food of the gods and partook of them to experience the ecstasy and terror of the divine. LSD wasn't invented until 1938, but it quickly became a cultural phenomenon. It's no exaggeration to say that thanks to LSD, America will never be quite the same again. Hallucinogens may duplicate transmitters for neurons of the cerebral cortex, which combines incoming impulses into a mental image of reality. They can speed this process up by triggering more impulses, or slow it down by inhibiting the neurons from firing. The result is a massive alteration of the mental image. Colors become brighter. Sounds become clearer. Inner and outer worlds become one. Images from the depths of the mind mingle with everyday reality. The normal formation of consciousness can become a vision of God or a nightmare of madness. In the 1960s, Americans were shocked by the instant popularity of hallucinogens among their sons and daughters. Even today, many young people play a kind of Russian roulette with the unpredictable effect of LSD or its relative, PCP, angel dust, which can cause psychosis or death. For those who ask why, the answer seems to be that many young people suffer from pain that aspirin can't help. The psychic pain of emptiness and boredom. For some, the instant adventure of a chemically altered mind and even the horrors of a bad trip seem preferable to unaltered reality. And they're not alone. Ever since the Aztecs ate the food of the gods, all kinds of people have been turning to drugs. The earliest writings give us our first glimpse of civilizations already old and already skilled at altering consciousness to control pain. A medical manual from China, written before the birth of Christ, gives us a remedy for ulcers, headaches, and tooth decay. In 1850, Americans were taking the same remedy for the same complaints. They could buy it at a drugstore without a prescription, just the way you'd buy aspirin today. But in 1850, if you had a headache, you'd ask for extract of cannabis sativa, a mild hallucinogen known today as marijuana. Marijuana used to be an important crop in America. We called it hemp and grew tons of it to make sturdy hemp rope. In fact, hemp was so important to the economy of colonial Virginia that you could be legally penalized for not growing it. So most Virginia planters did, including the master of Mount Vernon Plantation, Mr. George Washington. The East had more than one drug to offer the West. Asians smoked resin from the opium poppy as a cure for indigestion. In 1803, a German chemist isolated its pain-killing ingredient, morphine. In this pure form, it dulled the agonies of Yankee and rebel wounded in the American Civil War. However, people all over the world haven't used opium and marijuana for thousands of years strictly for medicinal purposes. Since the beginning, the search for diminished pain has also been a search for expanded reality. 5,000 years ago, opium was called the plant of joy. During the 19th century, medicinal opium and marijuana made their own contributions to Western culture. Some of our literary classics were inspired by drugs. Edgar Allan Poe, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Sir Walter Scott, all wrote under opium's influence. The French poet Charles Baudelaire belonged to the Club des Hachishines, dedicated to hashish, one of the purest forms of marijuana. As opium and marijuana influenced our civilization's art, they also enlivened its fun. By 1900, hashish hells and opium dens were attracting many rather fashionable people in American cities. Guardians of morality began to declare drugstores as sinful as saloons, and their case was bolstered by a frightening discovery. Many people who took opium or morphine couldn't stop. They became addicted, frequently after their physicians had prescribed the drug. So scientists went back to opium looking for a non-addictive ingredient. They thought they had found one, heroin. It stopped pain even better than morphine did. But thousands have discovered to their sorrow that its grip is even deadlier. By the early 20th century, the tide of reaction against drugs began to swell. Public ignorance and fear lumped together truly dangerous drugs like morphine with relatively harmless ones like marijuana. Films like the classic Reefer Madness equated a puff of grass with the destruction of sanity.
Master.
with the star's almost instant descent into incurable psychosis. To this day, many Americans think of all drugs as secret substances ingested by the dark underground of society. But that's not true. There's a third class of drugs that people use and misuse every day. Jane, for example. She'd be baffled if you told her she has a drug problem, but she does. She was getting so keyed up by the end of the day that sleeping wasn't easy. So she bought some sleeping pills that she'd seen advertised. Now she doesn't know what she'd do without them. Trouble was, sleeping pills left her feeling pretty groggy at the office. Then she discovered she was gaining weight. Her doctor prescribed diet pills. And these made her feel wide awake at work. Jane thinks her diet pills are terrific. She's never hungry at lunchtime, and she gets in an extra hour of very efficient work. But somehow, she started feeling all keyed up again. Then a friend gave her another pill, a tranquilizer. Jane actually felt a little proud about needing a tranquilizer. After all, wasn't that a busy executive's badge of success? But lately, when she runs out, the only thing she feels is panic. Jane is becoming dependent on a third class of drug, stimulants and depressants. They alter the functioning of just about every neuron in your body. Stimulants make your neurons fire impulses at a much faster rate. Everything in your body works faster and harder for several hours. The best-known stimulants are the amphetamines. Solid citizens like Jane despise or pity young people who get hooked on speed, or bennies, or uppers. Jane doesn't realize that she can get hooked on amphetamines, too. Doctors prescribe them as diet pills because they reduce appetite. Some athletes take them to literally fire up for games. And in World War II, Americans, Germans, and Japanese sometimes went into battle speeding on amphetamines. Depressants have just the opposite effect. They slow everything down. Among street drug users, they're called, not surprisingly, downers. The rest of society calls them other names: sleeping pills, tranquilizers, barbiturates, all readily available with, and sometimes without, a prescription. And there's one more member of the downer family I think you'll recognize: alcohol. Yes, our friendly corner bar is in fact a kind of drugstore because it dispenses a substance which, taken in quantity, slows down your nervous system and so alters your actions and your consciousness. Downers like alcohol and tranquilizers, and stimulants like the nicotine in cigarettes, are legal. But more than that, they're acceptable. Society urges you to take them. Nobody thinks you're weird if you have a cocktail or take a Valium. And after all, they do have pleasant results. They make us calm, relaxed, even friendly and happy. They also do this.
What's your name? Huh?
Eric?
Because, like any other drug, their misuse can be disastrous. And like heroin, most downers, yes, even alcohol, are physically addictive. In fact, alcoholism is the #1 drug addiction problem in America, even worse than heroin. Why? Well, maybe because people who drink too much never think they're abusing a dangerous drug. They think they're just having a couple of drinks. Popular as alcohol is, it still isn't the world's most popular drug. And what is? It's something called 1,3,7-trimethylxanthine, a mild stimulant that works just like amphetamines. Americans take it 160 billion times each year. And I'm going to take it right now. It's caffeine. There's enough in 1 cup of coffee or tea to speed up your entire nervous system. Fortunately, there's no conclusive evidence that caffeine is physically addictive. But don't argue that with anyone who hasn't had the usual morning cup of coffee. The fact is that in America today, drugs are everywhere. Americans have more chemicals for altering consciousness than any other people in history. Psychologists and doctors concerned about the dangers of drugs are searching for ways to achieve their good effects without resorting to chemical means. They want to avoid the necessity of directly altering consciousness with chemicals. They want to teach the body to alter its own consciousness indirectly by speeding up or slowing down its own neurons. Ironically, their search for this alternative method sent them back to the homeland of hashish and opium. They went to India, not like their ancestors to trade for drugs, but to study the ancient discipline of yoga. Indian yogis spend decades training their bodies and their minds. Their exercises and concentration produce a drugless control over the nervous system, which, to Westerners, seems unbelievable. Yogis can endure intense pain. One yogi slowed his metabolism beyond any tranquilizer, slow enough to live hours in an airtight compartment. And they testify that their meditation brings a blissful feeling of peace and union with all life, without LSD. Western science wanted to know, how do they do it? So they monitored the electrical currents in yogis' brains during their meditations. They discovered a predominance of slow alpha waves, the same currents that occur in our brains when we rest. The yogis could instantly switch their brains to alpha or even slower theta waves when they encountered pain. Switching over the brain was the yogi's secret to natural pain control. The only problem was, how many Westerners would study 20 years to achieve this? Western science needed a method like yoga for the modern world. Eventually, it found one. This man is learning how to relax his muscles. This man is training his heart to beat more slowly. These people are learning to raise at will the skin temperature of their fingers. These are yogic accomplishments, but they're accomplished without yoga. Instead, patients are wired to a special machine. They concentrate on biological goals. The machine's audio tone tells them when they're succeeding. To borrow a computer term, that's information feedback. So the machine and the technique are called biofeedback. Biofeedback patients can learn to regulate even basic body functions like heart rate and temperature. Using these skills, some can learn to calm their anxieties and dissolve their tensions. Recent evidence shows that biofeedback and meditation may change the levels of natural pain-killing chemicals in the blood. If this is so, we can give ourselves the benefits of drugs and avoid addiction, overdose, bad trips, and death. The success of biofeedback reinforces what yogis believe, that the mind really can control the body. That belief is basic to all of the many forms of meditation currently practiced in East and West, and to a growing interest in meditation and biofeedback among doctors. There's more and more evidence that mind and body are one inseparable whole, and that our state of mind is a powerful influence on our physical health. Happiness and serenity may help prevent major diseases like hypertension and heart attacks. Tension and depression may help cause them. Many doctors now hope to prevent bodily illness by healing the mind. Painkillers, hallucinogens, stimulants, and depressants may someday be remembered as crude concoctions from the primitive beginnings of pain control. Until then, they'll continue to be a blessing and a curse to the human race that discovered them. And it is true that when used correctly, they can do good. Aspirin, Novocaine, morphine, and alcohol have helped many people through pain, great and small. Drugs have been much more than good medicine. Their effects on our consciousness have often been inspiring, sometimes awesome, and frequently fun. No, drugs have been around for thousands of years. They're not going to disappear tomorrow.